Saints Day, and we acknowledge Hebrews 11. I can't tell you how many times, but I don't know that it's ever been on a Sunday that wasn't the first Sunday in November. So today is a different day for me. But when I think about faith, and I mentioned this a year or two ago, this story that I heard about how this town was really needing rain. So they decided to gather at the football stadium and pray for rain. But only one guy brought it. But we can say we have faith, but do we really have faith? You're acting like you actually have faith. How many people in that story showed up saying they have faith that God was going to bring them rain, but go to someone but they never jump out of the plane? Now, some of y'all might think that's common sense. Why are you going to jump out of a plane? If I ever weigh light enough, you got to be under 250. If I'm ever under 250, ETH involved, so that glass isn't going anywhere, but to just people watch there. Because you have some who get there and start shaking, trembling, and crying. And then they have that family member. Usually it's like, I don't want to go. And then they finally look down of it. I'm thinking, first of all, that's the dumbest place to start shaking, right? That's what we spiritually do so frequently. I think spiritually so much of the time out of the plane, terrified. We're absolutely terrified. But it's a Christian faith for a reason. And by us having faith, Hebrews 11 gets into a routine a couple verses in. The elders of the past were approved it. God speaks things, how creation took place, but I do believe approval to him for his gift. Though he died, he is still speaking through faith. So Abel's voice isn't gone. Why? Faith. By faith, yet. Because of a couple scriptures in the Bible, they believe that it hadn't even rained, that God's design of the earth was so perfect that everything was nurtured from streams from below. Now, whether it rained yet or not, I don't know. Okay? I could see both sides of the argument. But let's say it had rained for a second. Let's pretend like it had rained just like we're used to. What are y'all going to think if this dude, pretty wealthy, spends 100 years building a giant boat in his backyard, nowhere near water? Okay, go out in the middle of the desert and imagine a man spending all of his hard-earned money to build a boat. No way to move the boat. And he asked him, hey, why are you building a boat? God told me to. How is that going to go over to the average person? They're going to think he is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Now, let's pretend for a second that it hadn't rained before. Let's pretend like you had never experienced rain, like some theologians believe. That everything was nurtured from the ground below, that you just got water from streams and stuff, but it hadn't yet rained on the earth. Now what are you going to think? This dude is building this giant boat in his backyard. By the way, I think Noah was a redneck, okay? There's several biblical characters that I believe were rednecks. Noah's one of them. But Noah's in his backyard building this giant boat. He's spending 100 years building it. And he's like, yeah, see, God's going to flood the earth. And they're like, oh, all these rivers and stuff are just going to overflow. Actually, there's going to be this water that's going to fall from the sky. He seems extra crazy now. There's not a world where Noah doesn't seem crazy. But what? By faith, he still did it. Then we have by faith Abraham, by faith Sarah, by faith, and once again Abraham, by faith Isaac, by faith Jacob, by faith Joseph, by faith Moses. And we keep getting on and on of these different people. We have by faith. Jericho's walls fell after the people marched around them for 7 days. Let's stop there for a minute. You know, we hear that song, when the walls come tumbling down. Right? Y'all know the song I'm talking about? Let's think about this with the Battle of Jericho for a minute. First of all, years ago, there's this video going around online where there's a kid supposed to be singing Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho, but the kid was saying Joshua fought the Battle of Cherry Coke, because Cherry Coke was a big thing at the time, and the boy was confused. Kids say cute things. But the Battle of Jericho, there are these big walls. And they're like, hey, God said that if you march around them for 7 days in silence, 6 days in silence, then on the seventh day, you start blowing your trumpet horn. You actually do the symbol of victory. The walls will just fall down. What do you think those people thought when they were walking around, marching around Jericho, marching around? And then on the seventh day, they did about Gideon, Samuel, and the prophets. Through faith, they conquered kingdoms, brought about justice, realized promise them to death. But in the sin, that a lot of ways, especially in our modern cancel culture, they would. But through the blood of Jesus, you are. It's so full of faith that they're broken. And she made the statement that her dad had been a pastor too. She was actually a sixth-generation pastor. That's crazy. And she said that her dad, when she was pastoring, had said when they got to one of the church, said, you know what, this is the little piece of heaven that God has entrusted church with. And I started thinking about that, and I was thinking about the area around church or heaven that we as Maxwell Chapel have been entrusted with. We should be really wanting to reach these people around us and making sure these people around us know that in their brokenness and in their messiness, God's grace is enough. Change. And she says, but why don't you come in? And he says, well, I have an embarrassing story that would involve some phone calls and stuff before I'm allowed inside the church. And she says, well, give me the phone number. You're welcome in God's house. So the next week he comes in and they have a plan for him to sit on the back row and the people he's going to sit with and all this stuff. And there's this old lady in the church that was not having that. She said, no, he sits with me. And she started pouring into him and just loving him and caring about him.